The defendant and counsel and court personnel went to the B1 level of this courthouse where there was a 12-foot John boat that's depicted in State's Exhibit 121 in a parking area there. And after we had assembled there, the jurors came down, were instructed by me to walk around the boat and look at it to the extent that they found it necessary. And when they'd finished looking at everything they needed to see, to reassemble on one side of one area of the parking deck. And when that occurred, they were escorted back to the jury room by Deputy Edwards. No testimony was taken. No one said anything in their presence other than myself by those instructions, nor did any juror make any statement, or they were in compliance with my instructions. They probably looked at the boat for less than 10 minutes. Anybody want to put anything in the record about that? Anything else? Okay. All right. Detective Woodard is back on the stand. Sheriff, bring the jury in and we'll proceed on. All right, we're back in session, folks. Thank you for complying with my instructions. We're ready to proceed now. I think Mr. Woodard was on the stand. He's back on the stand. You may proceed with your examination.
Thank you, Detective Woodard, when we had left off, I guess you'd walked down to the landing and seen where that boat was on July 24th. Do you remember what time it was that you got out there?
Yes, I arrived at around 12:55.
And when you got there, who else was on the scene?
When I first arrived, it were detectives Gill and Latour from the Raleigh Police Department. There was also 2 patrol deputies from the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office. One was a Frank Simpa Sr., then the other one was Chris Wynn.
And I guess were you the first detective from Fort Bend County on the scene?
Yes, I was.
And I guess were you the lead detective for Fort Bend County in this investigation?
Yes, sir, I was.
When you first got there, did you talk to Detectives Gill and Latour from the Raleigh Police Department and about the information that they had acquired up to that point?
Yes, sir. Actually, when I first got there, I had time for a brief introduction to Detective Latour, and most of my contact was with Detective Gill, who provided me a summary of information that they had learned up to the point of arriving at the 4336 Skinner Lane address.
At that point, when you were there with Detective Gill, was Karen Berry there as well?
Yes, sir. Karen Berry was there at the house, but she was inside when I first arrived.
At some point that day, did Karen Berry walk around the property pointing out things to detectives?
Yes, she did.
Were you there for that?
Not for the initial pointing out, if you will. That was done with Detective Gill and Detective Latour, I assume. Detective Gill relayed to me some of the information that had been conveyed to him during that time, though.
So that had already been, the first walk around the property with Karen had already occurred?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And she was back inside at that point?
Yes, sir, for a period of time.
So after you got this information from Detective Gill about what Raleigh detectives had learned up to this point, what did you do next?
Well, at that time, myself and Detective Gill consulted. They being Raleigh Police Department, had already initiated an investigation of a missing person case. So we needed to make a determination who would be the lead investigative agency from that point forward. Detective Gill shared with me that the Raleigh Police Department wished to continue in that role as they had initiated. Then I just extended the services of the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office and any resources that we may be able to call to bear to them. And from that point, we proceeded with the investigation.
And what resources did you provide after that conversation? What happened next?
Well, I was advised by Detective Gill that they had been provided with some information that would suggest that victim Laura Ackerson could possibly be concealed. Her body could be concealed in the creek across the street. So some of the resources that we called, or that I called for initially through one of the other supervisors, were representatives of our investigation division, as Investigator Oreskovich is, and some additional equipment in the form of trailers and search resources through the Richmond Fire Department. We're not too far from the city of Richmond, and they have some watercraft that could assist us in searching the waterway. So those were some of the initial resources that we called, and then as the day continued, we realized that the need for some more would be needed to complete the search. So then we called for more later that evening.
When it was just you and the 2 Raleigh detectives and I guess the 2 sheriff's deputies from Fort Bend County out there, and when you first arrived on that scene, did you attempt to cordon off the scene so no one could walk into it and affect it?
Yes, as soon as I arrived, I had met with Officer Wynn, who was already securing the scene at the time that I arrived. I actually parked outside the scene for that reason. He had already initiated a crime scene log, which is it's just a manifest, if you will, a record of who comes and goes from the crime scene, and he kind of acts as a gatekeeper, if you will, for the scene, and I ensured that he was going to continue in that role.
Okay. After that happened, shortly thereafter, did Investigator Oreskovich come and that boat came as well?
Yes, it did.
And at some point, we've heard testimony from Investigator Oreskovich that she went out in that boat with the Richmond Fire Department personnel. When that happened, what did you do?
But just for clarification, you keep referring to that boat. That boat that belonged to the law enforcement agency.
Thank you, Your Honor. So to be clear, there's the boat that's down in the landing that we've seen so far today, correct?
Correct.
And then additionally, the Richmond Fire Department showed up with a boat with a motor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Referring to that motorboat, I guess, with Investigator Oreskovich and the Richmond Fire Department personnel, that boat with the motor on it went out into the creek. Is that accurate?
Yes, they launched farther southwest of the location where this 12-foot Grumman boat was located. There was a landing there where they could back up to the water's edge and launch the boat.
As the boat was launched, what were you doing?
Myself and Detective Gill were continuing with the search along with some of the other identification investigators from the Sheriff's Office. And we were outside walking around and looking at some of the different items that you would see at the scene, trying to make an assessment of which items may constitute evidence, which items of interest stood out as items that we feel that should be collected and preserved for further testing.
For instance, one of the items, I think we saw a video earlier that showed a little bit of a cooler down by the landing where that Grumman boat was.
Yes, and to be clear, there was 3 coolers that I recall at the scene. One of the coolers that you're referring to that's down by the landing where this Grumman boat was located, it was a small, like what I would refer to as like a lunchbox type cooler. And it had been there apparently for an extended period of time. It had dirt and buildup on it, and it looked like it had just been an item that was discarded there by the boat.
At that point, you mentioned that there were 3 coolers. There was this cooler that appeared old to you down by the landing. Additionally, were there the 2 other coolers that were found on Karen Berry's property?
Yes, sir. Those were 2 larger new appearing coolers. One was a 75 quart Coleman. The other one was a 120 quart Coleman. Both of them were recovered from the property there of the Berries.
As part of your investigation, did you end up making a schematic of the Karen Berry's property, the creek area, and also the inside of Karen Berry's house?
Yes, sir. I made 3 individual schematics that would include information that you just described.
Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective, I need you to mark for identification purposes of the state's exhibit 228, 229, and 230. Do you recognize those?
Yes, sir, I do. Those are the 3 schematics that I prepared.
And do those fairly and accurately depict the scene as you saw it back on July 24th of 2011?
Yes, sir, they do.
And to be clear, state's exhibit 228 is a schematic of Karen Berry's property,
Yes, sir.
and state's exhibit 229 is a schematic of the creek area and Karen Berry's property.
Yes.
And then state's exhibit 230 is, I guess, a blueprint, a schematic of Karen Berry's house.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I'd seek to enter state's exhibit 228 through 230.
None be received.
Your Honor, I would ask to publish these to the jury at this time.
You may.
16 copies.
Are you passing out individual copies to the jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, that request is allowed. Folks, you should be getting a copy of 228, 229, and 230. So you have 3 separate copies.
Detective, I guess starting out with, I don't believe the jurors' copies are numbered. State's Exhibit 228, is that the schematic of Karen Berry's property?
Yes, sir, it is. This one.
Your Honor, can I publish State's Exhibit 228 on
You may.
Detective, before us is State's Exhibit 228. Is that the schematic of Karen Berry's property?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And on the left side of this picture, is that, what road is that?
This is Skinner Lane. It runs southwest by northeast.
Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit 188?
All right.
Detective, this is State's Exhibit 188 that's previously been entered. Looking at this picture, does that depict the, I guess, the eastern side of Karen Berry's property?
Yes, this is the driveway that actually runs along the south edge of the property. It extends to Skinner Drive, and you're about a third of the way into the property from the vantage point of this photograph, and you're looking back towards the rear
Okay, so
property.
looking back at State's Exhibit 228, could you point out where that picture is taken?
The vantage point of that photograph would be right about this point right here, and you're facing this way, looking at this portion of the property.
And going back to the State's Exhibit 188, there was some mention earlier of some yellow tie-down straps. Are those depicted in this picture?
Yes, sir, they are. That's them right on the left side of the driveway, right there.
And going back to the State's Exhibit 228, are those noted on this schematic?
Yes, sir, they're noted by the letter N. N as in Nora, and that would be this location right here.
Moving your attention to State's Exhibit 230, I put that up on the screen. Is that the one of the house?
Yes, sir, it is. This is just a blow-up diagram of the residence itself.
Could you explain to the jury where Skinner Lane is in relation to this house schematic?
Yes, Skinner Lane, again, would be over in this area, and it would run southwest to northeast. All the diagrams are drawn with north being towards the top of the diagram.
And one of those, could you point out on this schematic where the coolers were located?
Sure. The smaller of the two Coleman coolers, the blue 75 quart Coleman ice chest that is described as being a roller, it has wheels on it, was right here on this diagram. That's just inside a covered walkway on the south edge of the property. Just to give you an idea of the distance, that's approximately 11 feet from this southeast corner of the residence to where that ice chest was located. The second ice chest was the 120 quart Coleman coolers, also a Coleman brand, appeared to be new. It was right here, that's marked on the diagram, and it is approximately 6 feet from the southeast edge of the residence to where that cooler was located. It was in the grass.
Actually, State's Exhibit 94. Is that, can you point out where the cooler is in this picture?
Yes, the smaller of the two coolers, the 75 quart cooler, is right here. This is actually a covered walkway there, but that cooler's right here, and you can't view the second cooler, the larger cooler, from that photograph.
This is State's Exhibit 96. Is that just a closer angle of that
Y-
cooler?
Yes, it is, right there.
Eric, how approach witness?
You ready?
Detective, I hand you what's been marked and entered in evidence, actually, State's Exhibit 189 through 194. Could you look at those?
Yes, sir.
Those depict the inside of that house and the barn, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Looking at those, State's Exhibit, the one on the top there, does that depict the inside of the house?
Number 189 you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes, sir. This is a photograph that was taken inside what I would refer to as the multi-use dining room in that home, which would be the far north east corner room of the residence.
And could you explain for the jury, we've seen some pictures of the front of this house, but where is the entrance to this house?
There were two doors that would allow you to enter the home, but the door that was primarily used as the main entrance is this doorway right here.
Actually, State's Exhibit 93. Could you point out that front entrance on here?
Yes, sir. It's kind of behind the tree, but it would be in this area on the other side of this tree walkway. You would walk in through this arbor, go up and then turn to your right, and then the main access door would be in this area of the home.
And was there a piece of furniture on that front porch as well?
Yes, sir, there was.
And that was this hutch that was in two pieces covered with U-Haul blankets?
Yes, sir. Actually, it was in two main pieces, but there was a third piece there. It was a marble type top that was also wrapped individually, and that would be on the porch right here near the primary entrance to the residence.
And then actually State's Exhibit 189. Could you point to where this picture is located on that map?
Yes, sir. This room, far northeast corner room.
And it appears on this schematic. Did you find some CDs by Grant Hayes in this room?
Well, actually, there was a partial wall right here that separates this dining room area from what I would refer to as the TV room or the living room area. There were some CDs of Grant Hayes that were on the shelf, the TV shelf right here, that actually faces out into this TV room.
Okay. And so behind that, in this room that's depicted in State's Exhibit 189, there was a computer that was seized. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was also a note that was found, or a receipt with a note written on the back that was found on this desk.
Yes, sir, there was.
Okay. Your Honor, come first witness.
All right.
Detective, I believe this has previously been entered in the evidence. Is this the note that you found there in State's Exhibit 190?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And this is the one that on the back says jamie.gortney at ci.kinston.nc.us.
Yes, sir, it is.
And so that appears to be an email address written on the back of this.
Yes, it is.
And on the front of this is that receipt for a stay from July 17th to July 18th at a Motel 6.
Yes, sir, it is.
And that Motel 6 is in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yes, sir.
And could you just tell the jury whose name the reservation is under?
According to this receipt, it's Amanda Smith.
It doesn't say Amanda Hayes. It says Amanda Smith.
That's correct. It's Amanda Smith, New York, 10009, USA.
So it doesn't list Amanda Hayes' address as being in Kinston, North Carolina, or Raleigh, North Carolina.
No, sir, it does not.
It says New York, New York.
Correct.
To be clear, July 17th was the Sunday before you were there, correct?
Yes, sir. Exactly 1 week before we were called to the scene.
Elsewhere in this house, were you able to identify who was sleeping in what room?
Yes, sir, we were.
And could you briefly tell the jury which room was who slept in each room?
Yes, sir. The room at the down at the bottom right of the diagram, which would be the southeast corner room, That's the bedroom that's shared by Mr. and Mrs. Berry's sons, Dalton and Shelton Berry. The room directly across, which will be the southwest corner of the residence, is the master bedroom, if you will. That's Mr. and Mrs. Berry's bedroom. And that is the bedroom in which Amanda and Grant Hayes, along with their children, stayed, according to the information I was provided. Also in the residence, there is a third potential bedroom. It was appeared to be used as storage at the time that we were there. It had some beds in there, but the beds were on the side, stacked up against the wall, and there were some other items on the floor, so it didn't appear to be currently being used as a bedroom.
And on the schematic, I guess you noted that there was a shotgun with a case found in that room.
Yes, that would be in that spare room, if you will, right there.
When you're investigating a scene, is it important for you to, I guess, know where any weapons are?
Yes.
That shotgun, did it have any relevance to this investigation that you could tell?
At that time, there was none that we could identify, but at the same point, at the time that this shotgun was noted and marked to be collected, there had not been a body recovered, nor had a cause of death been determined. So we were identifying, as we normally do, you identify any evidence that you might potentially need to have tested in the future, and that's what we did.
And we've heard a little bit today about processing. As a detective on the scene, when you find a piece of evidence, for instance, with one of these coolers, what do you do with the cooler once you find it on the scene?
Well, we have identification personnel on scene, which we did in this instance and frequently do. We call their attention to that item to make sure that that item is contained within any videography or photography, and also advise them that the evidence needs to be collected and preserved for future testing and analysis. And you work together. You work with the crime scene unit, and you go through and you identify these different areas of concern that you've made. And in turn, they may be able to share with you some more information that they've seen.
When you find a piece of evidence like these coolers, do you make sure that no one touches them with a non-gloved hand? Do you make sure that they're preserved as best as possible?
Yes, yes.
Inside the house, aside from this receipt with Amanda Smith's name on it, did you find any other evidence that you believe to be relevant to this investigation?
Well, we mentioned earlier it'd be the CPU portion of the desktop computer that was recovered from that desk area, the same desk area where this Motel 6 note was recovered from. That was seized.
And aside from that, and noting where, I guess, noting where the hutch was anything else of value located in that house?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving your attention to State's Exhibit 228. That's the schematic of Karen Berry's property, is that right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Starting, I guess, with the house, A and B on that schematic, those are the coolers that we've talked about today. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Sticking in the house, F is the shotgun that you just mentioned.
That's correct.
And then P was the hutch, the wooden cabinet that was in pieces with the U-Haul blankets.
Yes, sir, and that was actually outside of the residence. It was on a porch, but it was outside.
On the, I guess, north side of that house, the side opposite, I'll show you State's Exhibit 188. On the other side of this house, there's a dog pen. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think in the video it showed two dogs over there. Did you know why there are these dogs on the property?
Well, actually, there was two dog pens that we located there. One of the dog pens is going to be this area right here. At the time of the initial walkthrough, I don't believe there were any animals in that dog pen. There was a second dog pen that would be on the north side of a barn that was behind the residence, and there were dogs there. Shelton and Dalton had a business. Shelton was running at the Critter Catchers, and they would hunt hogs, feral hogs. And to my understanding, these dogs were used in the hunting of hogs.
And item K, I'm sorry, item L, was there a black Ford F-150 that you found outside that house?
Yes, sir.
And did that have some markings on the outside of it that identified it as Shelton and Dalton's business, or Shelton's business about catching feral hogs?
Yes, sir. He had a sign on, signs on the doors that said Critter Catcher, and he had an additional sticker on the back window that was a tap out emblem, but the Critter Catcher was displayed on both the doors.
And so those three vehicles are noted on this schematic K, L, and M were the three cars that were found there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talked about the black Ford F-150. There was also a red Mazda that was found there at the scene?
Yes, sir. The red Mazda was backed in right here next to the black F-150.
And then there was another maroon Ford F-350 that was found in the front yard?
Yes, sir. The 1-ton truck was parked right there.
And then you mentioned the tie-down straps that were pictured in State's Exhibit 188. Those are noted on here as item N?
Yes, sir. And that would be right there next to the drive, the residence.
And above that, did you find some sort of plastic garbage bag at some point during your investigation?
Yes, sir. On day 3, we were searching the property again, and as we were exiting and clearing the scene, looking for any additional items of interest, I observed a black plastic bag that had blown up underneath some pot plants and plants right there in that area. So we had that item collected as well. Didn't recall having seen that during the prior 2 days that we were out there, but just to be cautious, we collected it as well.
So I guess jumping ahead a little bit, you're there on this Sunday afternoon searching this property, and you don't release it until sometime that next Tuesday?
Correct.
And so on Sunday and Monday, you never saw a plastic bag there, but on Tuesday, you find this plastic garbage bag?
Yes, sir.
And could you describe for the jury, let me show you State's Exhibit 188 again, where that garbage bag was?
Yes, that garbage bag would have been in this area here. It was just to the north of where these straps were, and there were some plants and other things here, and it had blown up next to them.
Okay. So just out of abundance of caution, he sees that as well?
Yes.
Now, moving towards the backyard, can I come first, witness?
You may.
Check, if I show you, it's been marked for identification purposes, the State's Exhibit 195 to 203. Just look at those.
Yes, sir.
And do those all depict that backyard area of Karen Berry's property?
Yes, they do.
Are they fair and accurate depictions of how that property appears?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, at this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 195 through 203.
I'll be received.
Your Honor, may I publish those?
You may.
Detective, I'll show you State's Exhibit 195. Could you indicate on this schematic where roughly this picture is taken?
Yes, sir. As you're standing here facing to the east, this would be the hog pen here to your right, which is what you see in the immediate right of the photograph. And then you have some couple of debris piles at the far east end of the property, which is what you're looking at straight ahead in this photograph.
And I show you State's Exhibit 195 again. Can you see those debris piles? Is that what?
Yes, sir. And in this area here? There's another there.
Previously, this jury saw when Detective Gill testified, a greenish suitcase. Is that where that suitcase was found, in one of those debris piles?
Yes, sir, it would have been in the rearmost debris pile, the one that's marked as item J on your diagram. That would be where that suitcase was recovered, along with some bleach bottles.
And there's some writing, I guess, on the bottom right of this picture. It says July 24th at 6:53 p.m. Were investigators from the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office, were they taking pictures as the day progressed?
Yes.
For instance, State's Exhibit 189, I guess these interior pictures, they appear to be taken earlier in the day at 1:51.
Yes, sir, that's actually a photograph that I took.
Okay, you took that picture.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as the day advances, are you searching different areas of this property and photographing it to document it?
Yes, sir.
Now, specifically with this hog pen, did you learn that Shelton or Dalton, the wild hogs, I guess, that they captured, they kept in that hog pen?
Yes, sir. This area right here. And it actually extends to the right beyond this photograph.
Actually, State's Exhibit 196. When you got there that Sunday, were there any hogs in there?
No, sir, there were not.
And I guess are wild hogs a problem in Texas?
Yes, they are.
Actually, State's Exhibit 197. Is this a closer look at that hog pen?
Yes, sir.
If I can zoom in on this picture a little bit. Were you here for Investigator Raskovich's testimony?
Yes, sir, I was.
And that glove packaging, is that seen in State's Exhibit 197?
Yes, sir. That is the cardboard packaging that comes with the long cuff neoprene chemical gloves.
Actually, State's Exhibit 198. What is this a picture of?
That's a picture of a darkened area within the hog pen. Once you enter the dog pen and you're looking at the ground surface, there was this one concentrated area that stood out because it was so much, the soil was so much darker than the rest of the ground surface in that area, and that's what that photograph is depicting. In the center of that portion, you'll see a small piece of plastic bag. That's that area right there. So that photograph was taken to concentrate on that area and that plastic bag as well.
In this picture, there's some light areas where the cursor is. Is that where sunlight was, I guess, streaming through any foliage?
Yes, yes it is. Some of the real bright areas, that's just from sunlight.
But these darker areas in the center of the picture, those, when you were looking at them, they differed greatly from how the rest of the soil appeared?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, that was State's Exhibit 198. Looking at State's Exhibit 199, can you see the darker shade of it in this picture?
Yes, sir. This would be the darkened area in the hog pen right here, and this would be a roll of expanded wire that was immediately adjacent to that darkened area.
Investigator Raskovich testified earlier about that wire. Did something on that wire catch your attention?
Yes, it did. This area of the wire right here that was closest or immediately adjacent to this darkened area in the soil, we were looking at the wire and it stood out as being corroded more so than the rest of that wire. So that area of the wire that was facing this, it had a different appearance, and there was also some dripping. It looked like some substance had dripped off and hardened on this wire.
And those droplets, is that what was swabbed by Investigator Raskovich?
Well, actually, as far as who would have swabbed it, I can't speak to, but we caused this entire roll to be collected and preserved for analysis later. That isn't the type of testing you want to do out there in the dirt. We get that back to a laboratory.
And in addition to the droplet, that wire looked discolored in that area as well?
Yes, sir, it did. It looked discolored, and there's also a strong odor as you were in this area of the hog pen.
what did that, what kind of odor was
It was a chemical odor.
So you say exhibit 200, is that same darkened area with a marker next to it?
Yes, sir, it is. That's the exact same area that we've been discussing, the darkened area in the soil. The top right portion of the photograph would be the expanded metal portion of that fencing material. That's just a photograph with an ID marker.
This is States Exhibit 201. Is that just a closer in view to give a sense of the scale of that darkened area?
Yes, sir, it is.
That smell that you mentioned, could you smell it just by standing there, or did you have to like get up with your nose in it to smell it?
When you were standing in that area, you could smell it. But I got down as well, and obviously it was stronger, and it was coming from that darkened area of the soil.
I'll show you States Exhibit 202. Does that depict that glove packaging?
Yes, sir. The neoprene long cuff chemical glove packaging is right here. This is still within that same small hog pen area.
States Exhibit 203, is that a closer view of that?
Yes, sir, it is.
And what kind of glove packaging did you say it was?
It's a neoprene LC for long cuff and chemical gloves. Just long cuff neoprene gloves.
And it says cleaning chemical series,
Yes, sir.
heavy duty above that,
Yes, sir. Size large.
chemical resistant. Okay. And taking you back to States Exhibit 228, did you mark that in the schematic as H and G are the spots of the darkened soil sample or the soil area, and H is the area where the gloves were found?
Yes, sir, I did. That would be H right there. That's where the glove packaging was recovered. And then G would be the darkened area of the soil with the wiring right next to it.
You may.
Detective, I hand you what's been marked as States Exhibit A238 for identification purposes. Do you recognize that? Additionally, I'll show you States Exhibit A237.
I don't know what it says on the packaging.
And States Exhibit A237, is that the soil sample?
Yes, sir. This is a soil sample from the hog pen.
And showing you, do you note on that soil sample where it's from?
Actually, it is noted on here where it was collected from. The collection would have been conducted by a member of our identification investigator team, and I was there and I was present when they were collected.
And so how did they take the soil sample?
Well, they would use the container to dig into the soil and just collect the soil sample and then seal it. And then they would place it in envelopes and seal them and label them and then transport them back to the sheriff's office.
And previously, did you testify in a hearing regarding this case?
Yes, I did.
And in the previous hearing, were all these envelopes sealed when you opened them?
Yes, I was the one that cut them open here in court.
Okay. Showing you States Exhibit A239, do you recognize that?
Yes, it's an additional soil sample that would have been taken or collected from the hog pen.
And if we could just put these, I guess, on top of the packages that they came out of.
Okay.
States Exhibit A239, does that also include another small sample with it?
Yes, it does.
And then turning your attention to States Exhibit A240, could you open that?
some scissors, please.
All right.
Yes, sir?
And what is included in State's Exhibit A240?
Excuse me.
And in State's Exhibit 240, are there 5 samples labeled 240A through 240E?
Yes, there are.
Okay. And then is there additionally another sample that looks like it shouldn't be in State's Exhibit 240?
Yes, this looks like it's just a sample, comparative sample, soil sample.
And looking at State's Exhibit 238, is that what State's Exhibit 238 was?
Yes, it is.
These 5 samples that were taken as part of State's Exhibit 240, do you recall where these samples were taken from?
Yes, these would be the darkened soil samples that were recovered from the hog pen area. And then additionally, you would have a small piece of plastic bag that was in the center of the darkened area. So we had two of the samples from there. And then this would just been some of the foliage that was laying on the ground surface that was collected. And then we weren't sure what that was, if it was just something that had fallen from a tree or exactly what this was, so it was collected just to
So the
be sure.
round object that you didn't know what it was, that's State's Exhibit 240D,
Yes,
and then 240A, 240B, and 240C are all 240B and E and C, those are all the soil samples that were collected. They were the darker material.
yes, actually this would be a soil sample, the one that's referenced as E and the one that's referenced as B. So B and E were actual the soil samples. The one that's marked C is the foliage that I was referring to being collected on top of the soil surface.
And A is the plastic bag.
A is the plastic bag that was found in the center of the darkened area.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 240 and its contents, along with State's Exhibit 238, 237, 239.
Let them be received.
Just taking State's Exhibit 240B, is that one of the darker soil samples that you recovered?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And comparing it to State's Exhibit 238, which is another soil sample from the hog pen, can you just hold these up to the jury and indicate how they're different?
Sure.
Is the darker soil sample much darker?
Yes.
And it was noticeable to you that day?
Yes, it was.
After you had taken those soil samples, or investigators had taken those soil samples, did they take those back to the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, they did.
And then, did you, I guess, gather all the evidence that was collected as part of the case and eventually release it to Detective Gill from the Raleigh Police Department?
Oh, actually, I was present when that was done. That would have been Investigator Breskovich. She gathered all the materials, listed it, inventoried it, inspected it, and released it to Detective Gill with the Raleigh Police Department.
And then, presumably, Detective Gill took all these items back to North Carolina to be examined?
Yes, where I saw them off as they were escorted with the evidence to the loading area for the truck, and then they started their journey back.
Your Honor, at this time I publish State's Exhibit 228.
You may.
Detective, where we left off, I guess, you had covered item G and H were found in that hog pen.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the barn behind Karen Berry's house, did you have occasion to go and search that?
Yes, I did.
I'll tell you what, let's stop. If you're going to move to another area, it's about 10 after 1, folks. Let's take the lunch recess at this time. Obviously, don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or any matter in controversy, be careful about your conduct. Follow my previous instructions. Come on back in about an hour and 15 minutes or so. Take about an hour and 15 minutes for lunch, and about 2:30. Come on back about 2:30 or so. Hope you have your lunch. See you then. Thank you. We're in recess until 2:30. Thank you.